There are prisons without bars. Gilded cages where the warden brings you freshly baked scones and criticizes the way you fold your napkins. My mother-in-law, Diana, was the architect, warden, and sole occupant of such a prison, a place called Heritage Heights. To the outside world, she was the benevolent queen of this perfect kingdom. To me, she was a master strategist in a silent war for the soul of my family. She didn't fight with shouts. She fought with a raised eyebrow, a backhanded compliment, a gift that came with 1,000 invisible strings. For years, I was losing. I was trying to play checkers while she was playing multi-dimensional chess. But I was about to learn that the most formidable fortress often has its weakest point buried deep in the past, in a secret so dark, it could turn her own perfect world to dust. Marrying Thomas was the easiest decision of my life. He was solid, kind, and saw the world in honest shades of gray. His mother, Diana, saw it in only two, thorns and everyone else. I was firmly in the everyone else category. I was a graphic designer from a big, loud, loving Italian family where we argued over dinner and made up with hugs. Diana's family communicated in polite, cutting subtleties. The campaign began subtly. She'd gift me designer clothes in a size too small. For motivation, darling. She'd re-gift my presents to her to the housekeeper in front of me. I'm sure Maria will get more use out of it. When Thomas was around, she was all saccharine sweetness. Oh, Gabriella tried to make a roast. It was ambitious. When I got pregnant, the war escalated. She hired a prenatal nutritionist without asking, who prescribed a bland, joyless diet. She tried to dictate the name. Sophia is so ethnic. What about Charlotte? It's so much more classic. She even bought a competing pram, a monstrously expensive silver cross, and parked it in our hallway, a constant reminder that her taste and her money were superior. The birth of my daughter, Sophia, was supposed to be my joy. Diana made it her project. She hired a postpartum doula who reported my every move back to her. Gabriella seems tired. She's not adhering to the feeding schedule. I felt like I was under constant surveillance in my own home. The breaking point, the moment the silent war turned hot, was over a house. Thomas and I found a charming, slightly run-down Victorian on the edge of town. It had a wild garden, a porch swing, and character. It felt like a home. We were over the moon. Diana was horrified. That neighborhood is transient, she declared over a tense Sunday dinner. The schools are mediocre. You will buy here in Heritage Heights. I've already put a deposit on the plot next to mine. We stood our ground. It was the first time I'd seen Thomas truly defy her. We got the mortgage approved. We were weeks from closing. Then the call came from the bank. Our loan had been denied. A massive, unexplained debt had appeared on Thomas's credit report. We were devastated. We confronted Diana. She was the picture of wide-eyed innocence. Oh, that dreadful mistake. I was refinancing my property and must have mixed up our social security numbers. These online forms are a menace. I'll have it cleared up immediately, of course. It was a lie, a calculated, malicious lie. She had sabotaged us. She had tanked our dream to force us into her gilded compound. Defeated, we had no choice. We moved into a rental apartment in a building Diana owned in Heritage Heights. The cage door slammed shut. She had a key. She used it daily, offering help that felt like a hostile takeover of my life. Have you ever felt your spirit being slowly sanded down, day by someone who claims to love you? Have you felt the walls of a life you didn't choose closing in? If you've ever been in a war with a smiling enemy, type "the siege" in the comments, because I reached my breaking point. And when a cornered animal stops running, that's when it becomes most dangerous. I was done being prey. It was time to become the hunter. Life inside the cage was a study in psychological torture. Diana's visits were inspections. She'd run a finger over a shelf, checking for dust. She'd rearrange my kitchen cabinets for better efficiency. She'd take Sophia for walks in her perfect pram, returning to tell me, "She prefers the upright position. You really should hold her less." Thomas was trapped in the middle, a man torn between the wife he loved and the mother who had programmed him since birth. Every time I tried to talk to him about it, he'd get a pained look. "She just wants to help, Gaby. That's just how she is. Don't rock the boat." The boat was already sinking, and I was the only one who seemed to notice we were underwater. The final straw was Sophia's second birthday party. My family came, my loud, laughing, hug-giving family. They filled our sterile apartment with noise and life and love. Deanna stood in the corner, a statue of disapproval, her smile a thin, grim line. After they left, she stayed to help clean. She found me in the kitchen. "Well, that was certainly vibrant," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "All that exuberance. I do hope Sophia doesn't develop that common volume. It's so unrefined." I was exhausted. I was done. I put down the dish towel and looked her directly in the eyes. "Deanna," I said, my voice low and steady. "Sophia is my daughter. That is my family. You will not criticize them in my home, not ever again." The air in the room went cold. The mask of pleasantry shattered. Her eyes narrowed into icy slits. "You're home," she hissed, gesturing around the apartment. "You are a tenant, in my building. Your daughter is a thorn. Her place is with her family, her real family. You are a temporary custodian, a placeholder. And if you think for 1 second you can come between me and what is mine, I will make sure you regret it. I will bury you so deep in legal and social ruin, you will never see your daughter again." The threat was naked and terrifying. This was no longer about napkin folding. This was a declaration of total war. I knew then that appeals to decency were useless. I needed a weapon. I needed to find the crack in her perfect marble facade. I started with her pride and joy, her reputation. She was the chair of the Heritage Heights Historical Society, the guardian of the community's pristine image. I began volunteering there, spending hours in the archives, ingratiating myself with the elderly members. I was the sweet, young mother, interested in local history. I learned that Diana, before her marriage, had been Diana Carlisle, a secretary at a prestigious investment firm, Whitlock and Associates. The firm's founder, Charles Whitlock, was a legendary figure known for his philanthropy. But when I dug into old microfiche records of the business section, I found a different story. A small, buried article mentioned an investigation into the firm for financial irregularities. The case seemed to have faded away, and Whitlock had died a few years later, his reputation largely intact. It was a thread, a thin, dusty thread. My break came from a box of uncatalogued donations from an old, deceased resident. It was filled with mundane papers from the 1980s, and buried among them was a carbon copy triplicate form, a fund transfer slip from Whitlock and Associates. It was for a staggering amount of money, signed by Charles Whitlock, and as a witness, Diana Carlisle. But that wasn't the bombshell. Scrawled in the margin, in a handwriting I knew intimately from her grocery lists and passive-aggressive notes, was a message. Final transfer. Cayman Holdings confirmed. Destroy original. My heart stopped. This wasn't a simple witness signature. This was a co-conspirator. She hadn't just worked there. She had been an active participant in siphoning funds. This was evidence of fraud, of embezzlement on a massive scale. She had helped her boss steal, and she had gotten away with it for over 30 years, using the stolen money to build her perfect life in Heritage Heights. The pristine, moralizing queen of the community was a thief. I had her. I had the weapon that could shatter her entire world. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. A public scandal could still splash back on Thomas and Sophia. I needed to be surgical. I needed to use this not to destroy her, but to force her unconditional surrender. I needed to free my family permanently. I hired a lawyer to draw up 3 documents. First, a property deed transferring the ownership of our entire apartment building to Thomas and me for the sum of $1. Second, a legally binding confession regarding her credit fraud against Thomas. Third, and most importantly, a grandparenting agreement that granted her specific, supervised visitation rights, which would be permanently revoked if she ever interfered in our parenting, criticized my family, or set foot on our property uninvited. I then scheduled a meeting at her immaculate home. I went alone. I needed her to feel the full, terrifying weight of her exposure without any buffers. She received me in her sunroom, sipping Earl Grey, the picture of condescending calm. "Gabriella, to what do I owe this intrusion?" I didn't sit. I placed the photocopy of the fund transfer slip on her pristine, glass-topped coffee table. "I've been volunteering at the Historical Society," I said calmly. "You wouldn't believe the fascinating things people donate. I found a real piece of history. It seems a young Diana Carlyle was quite the asset to Whitlock and Associates." I watched the blood drain from her face. It was a swift, terrifying exsanguination. Her hand, holding the china cup, began to tremble so violently the tea sloshed over the sides. She knew instantly that the game was over. This was not a negotiable domestic dispute. This was a life-ending revelation. What is this?" she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "This is your legacy, Diana," I said, my voice cold and flat. "This is the foundation your perfect life is built on. Theft. You tried to bury me, but you were standing on a grave you dug yourself." I laid out the documents. I explained the terms, the property transfer, the confession, the visitation agreement. "You will sign all of these today," I stated. "Or tomorrow morning, this document, along with a detailed statement from me, will be delivered to the district attorney's office, the IRS, and the Wall Street Journal. You will lose your money, your reputation, and your freedom. You will be a social pariah and a felon. The choice is yours." The mighty Diana Thorne crumbled. The elegant posture collapsed. The steely gaze dissolved into one of sheer animal terror. She was a puppet with her strings cut. Without a word, she picked up the pen and signed each document, her hand shaking so badly her signature was a pathetic scrawl. I gathered the papers. I looked at the broken woman weeping silently in her perfect sunroom. "The war is over, Diana," I said. "You lost." I walked out of her house, the signed documents in my hand, the deed to my family's freedom. We now live in a beautiful, sprawling, gloriously imperfect farmhouse 20 miles from Heritage Heights. The garden is a little wild, the floors creak, and it is filled with the sounds of my family's laughter. Thomas, finally freed from his mother's psychological grip, is a new man, happier, lighter, more present. Diana visits, for one strictly supervised hour, every other Sunday. She is quiet, polite, and utterly terrified of me. She brings appropriate gifts for Sophia and does not offer a single word of unsolicited advice. The lioness has been definitively declawed. Her plot to control us, to absorb my family into her perfect, sterile world, didn't just fail. It backfired in the most spectacularly satisfying way imaginable. In her quest to bury me, she handed me the shovel to unearth her own darkest secret. She gave me the power not just to escape her prison, but to become the warden of her own future behavior. The silence in my new home isn't oppressive anymore. It's peaceful. It's the sound of a battle won, a family saved, and a life reclaimed on my own terms.